So thank you again, Molly, for joining us, for speaking to CCC students today. Can you start by briefly telling me a little bit about yourself, your academic background, and where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for having me and making time for me on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm really excited to talk to y'all about marketing and then just kind of my career path to date, and hope that it can inspire you to look outside of maybe some of the traditional career fields that we're all grown up learning about. I grew up in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is north of San Antonio. So, a very small rural community. My dad is a veterinarian and raises cattle, and my mom is a school teacher. So, um, kind of grew up not really knowing a whole lot about corporate America, other than that it was big and there was a lot of money in the world of corporate America. But definitely grew up kind of with a foundation in agriculture that has uniquely positioned me throughout my career. So, like I said, my family raises cattle and has for a long time. So early on, I was involved in 4-H, and then when I got to high school, got plugged into the ag programs at my high school. But kind of simultaneously in high school, just developed a real interest for writing and journalism. So I was involved in my school's yearbook program. I was an editor of our high school newspaper, and when I was thinking about kind of where I went from there, I learned that the College of Ag at Texas A&M had a degree in agricultural communications and journalism, which seemed like the perfect combination of my passions, both for the agriculture industry, but then also for writing and journalism. So I went into A&M on scholarships, primarily from the San Antonio Livestock Exposition. They funded 100%. Well, they and other scholarships funded 100% of my undergraduate education. um, I went into school thinking that I wanted to be a journalist, so write for a newspaper. I also graduated high school and started college right around the time that the news industry was evolving drastically, and newspapers were becoming very quickly a thing of the past. So, in that, and kind of the digital transformation of the news industry, really started looking at other avenues that I could go into in terms of a job that would still allow me to kind of combine these passion points of writing and communications, alongside with my interest in agriculture. I guess I should maybe touch a bit on my career today quickly. So I did a number of internships throughout college, mostly writing based. Like I said, I'm really writing is kind of my first love in the marketing and communications world. Um, so I, served as a reporter for the department that I was in at Texas A&M. I did some different internships with publications, um, like ag magazines and stuff throughout college that my professors had connected me to. And then also in, I guess around my sophomore year, started to really think about marketing and advertising agencies as a path that I could go down. I had no, like I said, growing up in a small town with, my mom a teacher, my dad a small business owner, I had no idea the possibilities that existed from a career standpoint. And the terms I'm using today, at your age, I would have been completely clueless about. But um, so I started learning more about these agencies, which were essentially companies that businesses hired that would consult with them on big projects or big campaign launches or, excuse me, product launches, and kind of had an umbrella for all things marketing. I apologize. I'm catching what my children have. And just thought that that was like a really unique avenue to explore. So I started with internships with Fleischman Hillard and then went full time before graduating. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. So, talk to us a little bit about what exactly is marketing. We might know some of the things that marketing entails, but what is it exactly? And when did you first learn about a career in marketing that made you want to pursue it?
Yeah, I would say if I had to put it very concisely, I would consider marketing kind of everything that you do to increase demand for something. So, whether that's a product, whether that's a service that you offer as a business, um, whether that's yourself increasing demand for the skills that you offer as an individual, I think anything that you're doing to kind of drive demand for a good or service is um, the best way to look at marketing. And like I said, I didn't really understand, like, I knew marketing was part of business. My dad would buy advertisements in the local newspaper at the time, or do sponsorships of different events in the community. But I didn't really realize that that was someone's job until I got to college and started looking into, um, again, these agencies that were doing this, with hundreds and thousands and millions and billions of dollars for corporations that were much bigger than what I had grown up being exposed to. So that was kind of what piqued my interest. And then internships definitely kind of solidified that that's the path that I wanted to go down.
So, learning more about the field, gaining some of those experience kind of helped you realize, like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is where I need to be. So,
Absolutely.
So, what does a normal day at your job look like? It may change from day to day, but what does a regular, normal day look like? And was it what you expected after you gained some of that experience and learned more about the field?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the field of marketing is constantly evolving. So my expectations continue to be blown out of the water. And at the same time, my day to day looks very different, which is for me, as someone who really likes to learn and explore new things, a great opportunity. So today has been a fairly, like, I'd say, uneventful day at the office. I have spent my day developing a lot of content. So again, pulling in the writing that I have enjoyed doing for the majority of my life, into writing content for websites, writing content for social media, writing strategic communications plans to kind of piece all these different tactical things together for my clients. Um, a less kind of basic day, I would say, was a couple weeks ago. I actually am working on a campaign for an ag industry client for Fleischman Hillard, and we're doing a partnership with a celebrity. So we, for this project, had a video shoot for this upcoming campaign that will be um, visible to the public on social media. But I was responsible for making sure that the celebrity was secured, his agent was, all the logistics were handled for getting him to this shoot location. We actually did it on a farm in the Midwest, which made things a lot more complicated than what you might be doing in Hollywood. But so I was kind of the liaison between the celebrity and his agent, as well as the farm and the farmer, to make sure that their kind of needs were respected. And then the day of, I actually got to staff the shoot. I was responsible for so many different things: setting up tents so that our crew had shade, making sure that we had food and everyone was well fed, making sure that the area we were staging for one of the shoots was dressed appropriately. So literally hanging things on the walls to kind of create this set for the scene that we were doing for this campaign. And now that that shoot is over, my role looks a lot more like, okay, we have a team of editors that's working on editing this video content that will eventually launch on Facebook and Instagram. But my role is ensuring that the messages that our client wants to put out there about In this case, it's a broad industry that we're marketing as opposed to a specific product, but making sure that their organization, that their industry is painted in the best light possible for the consumers. Again, all going back to this um, overarching, goal of increasing demand for the product that their industry produces. And I would give y'all more details, but I have to be somewhat confidential on some of this stuff since it hasn't yet launched.
No worries. We appreciate the little bit of detail that we're able to get. We'll take what we can get, right? So you mentioned a lot of the writing that comes with marketing. So were you always good at writing, or is it a skill that you kind of grew and kind of enhanced as time went on and as you kind of moved through your field?
It's definitely a skill that has been enhanced. Like I said, it was never something that I hated. So I was definitely more, geared toward English and language arts classes as opposed to like some of the STEM curriculum in school. Um, but definitely through my journalism classes in high school, it was really kind of started to become fine tuned, and then throughout college and in my job. But with writing, I think one kind of misconception is that there's so many, it's not necessarily just writing essays like you have to do for school. Like there is somebody behind every brand that you follow on social media, developing captions for Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Twitter, which I don't even know if you guys use Twitter, but somebody is writing all of that. And if you think about, just even as you're shopping online, everything that you go to has words and everything has been written by someone. So there is someone in an organization that is responsible for product descriptions and website content. So whether, like, even if you're not maybe geared toward technical writing, or maybe you don't like writing essays for school, there are creative ways to be a writer without thinking of it through the lens of like what you learn in the day to day when you're in high school or even in college for that matter.
I think that's a perfect way to think about it. When we talk about writing, of course, in the college access space, it's always an essay form, right? So thinking
Mhm.
about it from even a simple social media caption or an advertising that you see on your Instagram page or even out in public or whatever, it's very much like you said, someone is behind that caption, behind those words. So if you're interested in writing, but you don't prefer essays per se, there still might be a possible future for you in the field of marketing. Right?
And I would say, I'm geared toward more of the content side of marketing, but it's such a huge industry and umbrella. I mean, there are people who have marketing jobs and their entire job revolves around pricing. So making sure that the price of their products is strategic and competitive. So that is very much, working in Excel and working with numbers and the things that I pass off because that is not my forte. But there are just so many different career paths that fall under the broad marketing umbrella that I would challenge you, like, you can probably find something you're interested in under that kind of overarching marketing umbrella.
I think that takes us to the next point. The next question is, what is a common misconception that most have about marketing?
One misconception I had that it was all about sales. So I would never want to be a sales representative for a company, like going to customers, cold calling on people, trying to push a product directly to a customer is just not really like, it makes me very uncomfortable. So I knew that I didn't want to be in sales, but a lot of times marketing, sales roles are listed as marketing. So I guess the common misconception would be that it is a narrow focused field. And um, like I said, I continue even now to uncover kind of different expertise that people have in the field of marketing, whether that's research, because there's a whole thing called market research that is involved in a lot of the work that I do. I know when I started my career, having a career in social media was just kind of an up and coming thing. And now that is very commonplace, especially as like an entry level marketing job opportunity. Sales does ladder up to marketing. So if you are the kind that is really interested in selling something, there's a ton of sales jobs available. And there's such a wide variety of things that you can do within the marketing field that yeah, that's the biggest misconception that I had going into it that I assume others have as well.
So, what's something that you thought you knew about marketing, but once you got into the field, besides maybe the sales thing, that you're like, oh, okay, this is not what I expected it to be at all?
I would say that there is kind of a science to it. Like I said, I'm not necessarily someone who's always been super geared toward like STEM disciplines, but there's a lot of social science that goes into marketing. There's an element of psychology and understanding what consumers really want and how to reach them in a way that resonates. Um, so yeah, I think that that's something that has kind of surprised me and reassured me too, because it's not necessarily a field that isn't fact based, if that makes any sense. Like we use a lot of data and a lot of insights um, that I think most people wouldn't think go into developing things like marketing campaigns.
So, I know you mentioned earlier that some things you might be able to tell us and others not. Not sure if it's just those that are like your current projects, but what's the most exciting project that you've worked on?
Oh gosh, the most exciting. This celebrity one is a pretty big one. We're trying something very new for the industry. So there's a lot of kind of risk associated with it, but I think there could be a lot of reward too. So that's pretty exciting. Beyond that, oh, I have to think back. So this is kind of again one of those things I never knew was was somebody's job. But crisis communications planning is part of what I do. And a few years ago, we did a whole crisis drill where we simulated, something blows up on social media. Say a tweet from an influencer goes viral and it's like really negative towards your brand or your industry. We held an entire drill that kind of simulated the roles of response that the company would have if that were to happen. So the fact that there's like software that allows you to do that and like act that out and refine your message and make sure that you're ready to go when and if you kind of get bad press was just mind blowing to me, and really fun to experience. Also because it was a drill and not real life. So that was really cool. Yeah, like a fire drill.
And I'm sure that you were happy that it was just a simulation.
Yes,
Was it
yes,
real
for
life?
sure. There's like a certain thrill of crisis communications, that's nice, but then you also are ready for it to end when
I'm
you're in the
sure.
midst of it.
I'm sure. So, what personal marketing advice would you give to a high schooler or even a college student who's trying to get into college or kind of pursue marketing once they get their degree, once they get their bachelor's?
I would say find mentors, try to identify people, even if they're strangers in the field who could kind of tell you about their job. Like I said, I think, one thing I hope for my children who are very young, but that I didn't necessarily get growing up is exposure to all the different roles that exist, in terms of career, not only just to marketing, but in general. I think once you work for a large corporation like I have, um, there's so many times that I'm like, how did they get that job? That seems so cool. Like, what did they study or what did they, develop in terms of expertise in order to get a role like that? And the best thing that I've found in identifying some of those opportunities is really just having conversations with people. So, maybe it's a teacher who has worked elsewhere, maybe they have connections to people that are working in the field of marketing. And honestly, even just reaching out to industry groups in your community. I know that there are, marketing associations and public relations associations in essentially every major city. So I would start by just seeing, okay, who are the leaders in those organizations? And it won't hurt anything to shoot them an email and ask if they have a few minutes to spare to kind of tell you about their career path. So would definitely encourage that in high school. And then um, as you go to college too, definitely, kind of using the network that you have to explore different opportunities. And then I think it's been mentioned in the chat, but internships are absolutely vital. Um, and more so for learning what you don't like, just as much as they are for identifying kind of what you do like. So I can't, stress the importance of getting some real world experience out there as well.
So that's exactly kind of where I was going with those internships. So what are some of the things that or I guess the better question is, what do you think is the difference between the students who do the internships and the students that don't? How did those types of experiences help you be where you are today?
Yeah, so contrary to popular belief, I think a lot of companies, you kind of forget that unlike school where there's like a start to the year and an end to the year, companies are working 24/7. Their year is ongoing. So there's not like a natural starting point for a bunch of new people to come on board and be, given a syllabus, given a rundown of this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it. So internships give you that hands-on experience so that when you do get your first job, you can kind of dive in and figure things out, because I think that's a pretty common expectation. And while there are onboarding processes at companies, I think thinking of it through the lens of I'm going to be expected to come in and hit the ground running in order to succeed and help my company succeed. Um, that's what kind of sets apart those who have that experience and those who don't.
So, Molly, we have a good variety of students on the call today. We have students that are currently in college, students that are just about to go off, high school students. What are skills or attributes that would make a person successful in the field of marketing?
I think just any form of communication is essential in probably every field, but written, verbal, how you present yourself, how you present, the topic or information that you're sharing is all a pretty critical, like tactical skill. I think you've got to be personable. I think you've got to be resourceful. So if you don't know something, how can you find out the answer to a question? And then I think just being inquisitive too. Like if you to be successful in marketing, you kind of have to have an always on approach to wanting to learn more about the people you're trying to reach and the audiences you're trying to reach and how to best do that. And with the evolution of how we communicate every day, and that, I mean, like I said, it's kind of been crazy just in the last 10 or so years that I've been in the workforce, how much that has changed. But that's going to continue to evolve frequently. So kind of staying up to date on how people like to receive information and which platforms and methods they like to do so would be pretty critical.
Okay. And Brian, I'm assuming that great minds think alike. I'm not sure if that's exactly the kind of question you were asking, but as I asked that one, you typed that one in the chat. So if you were looking for something a little different, type it in the chat, let me know. Or if that was pretty much your question, please do that as well. So the next question in the chat is, Molly, when a project becomes difficult or there's a day that you feel might not be going your way, what helps you remember your why, or at least kind of de-stress and recenter yourself before getting back to work?
Yeah, so we'll get a little personal here. So I am very type A. Like my strengths, achiever is number one. And I've always kind of been wired to go, 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 work, work, work. But that has led to burnout in a few cases for me. So this is something I'm kind of always continuing to refine. But in 2019, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and that was just kind of a big wake up call to me of what really matters. So, one thing this week I told the folks before you all joined on the call, my kids are dealing with common toddler sickness, which throws a big wrench into things as a working parent. But he told me on Monday, after having very little sleep the night before because of that, these are the problems we prayed for in the past. So I think continuing to go back to what really matters to me, my family is my why. That's why I work, so that I can afford to provide for my kids, so that my husband and I can build the life for ourselves and for them that we hope to. So I think just continuing to kind of ground ourselves in that truth that, what really matters, helps get it through the hard days for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'll say that's very important. Always remembering your why. I think no matter what you do, as long as you remember your why, whatever that is, that's what's going to keep you grounded and keep you going. Okay. So I think this is a great question, kind of taking us back to marketing, agriculture, business. What's the difference in majoring in marketing through the agriculture school versus school of business?
Um, I'm a huge proponent of the College of Ag, and I could spend a whole nother hour just speaking to the different career paths that you can have by choosing a major within the College of Ag. But one thing that I think continues to stand out, and I have colleagues who have studied agriculture at Kansas State University, Ohio State University, a lot of the different land grant universities across the United States. And the commonality is just kind of the care of the people within those colleges across the board is next level. I mean, I know at Texas A&M, and what I continue to hear from friends and coworkers about other schools is, ag people are good people, and they really care about the success of their students. And I'm not saying that you can't get that in the business school, but I think you get a little more hands-on advising in most colleges of ag. They're smaller courses. For me personally, having come from an ag background and studying agriculture, that expertise has absolutely propelled my career, because I come into an agency like Fleischman Hillard, and our biggest client is AT&T, and obviously I don't work on that account. um, but it's very hard for us to find people who have some level of understanding of an industry that's somewhat technical like agriculture is, that can do the work for some big clients in that work stream and do it without having to have, a million steps explained about the industry as a whole. And that foundational knowledge came from studying in the College of Ag, because at least at A&M when I was there, that career, or that kind of course load, involved taking classes in all different aspects of agriculture. And then I honed in on the marketing, communications, and journalism pieces, where I learned kind of those more tactical skills related to the field. But the industry expertise has definitely set me apart. Agriculture is an industry that will always be here. We will always need to eat, and that will always be kind of the foundation of it. So I think that is huge, and would definitely challenge you, even if you did not grow up with cattle like I did, which I know most people have not. There is something in the College of Ag for you. You can major in entomology, and that's used in like forensic science. So what you might see on like CSI or other television shows about crime scenes, that all ladders back to a degree from the College of Ag. Um, so yeah, that I am a huge proponent for the people and the like kind of more personal care you get in the College of Ag, but then also the opportunities that exist just within the broader field of agriculture.
So continue to do your research. Look at the opportunities that may be presented to you at the end of receiving that degree. It's all about being more marketable, right? So a great question here in the chat: do you have to have a marketing degree to go into marketing?
Absolutely not. I mean, my degree is technically in communications and journalism and political science, but I think that, um, yeah, I think there's so many different avenues and there's so many different majors out there today that you definitely, it's not like, my little sister's in medical school, for example. So, like, for her to become a doctor, she had a very specific, pre-med track that she had to take in her undergraduate course. This field is definitely not like that. I think that there are people from all majors, all walks of life, who have found themselves in a marketing position.
So, a question from one of our incoming freshmen who's about to start college. What helped you the most in networking with other marketing majors? What are some of the things that you did to kind of get yourself out there?
I think just getting involved in as many things as you can, obviously, while it's still prioritizing your academics. But there are so many different organizations that colleges and universities offer. I know at A&M they have a whole track of organizations that are geared just toward freshmen to kind of give them exposure to things within their college, things within their major. So I would plug in one kind of rule of thumb that I had throughout my 4 years at A&M was to always be plugged into something at the college or at the departmental, college, and university level within the organization or within the university. So, in the department, I was an ambassador for ag communications for my major within the Department of Ag Leadership and Communications. For the college, I was a member of the College of Ag Student Council. And then university wide, I was involved in student government and served as a student senator. But that kind of gave me a broad network beyond just the people who were studying the same thing as me that I would see in my classes every day, but just a broader network throughout the university as well.
So she gave good advice. Do it on different levels, guys. And we put some things in the chat, finding professional organizations, not just for, the hobbies that you like to do, but also things that are going to help you once you graduate from college too.
Yeah, and I know most universities have like great career fairs. I through the student council I was part of got to help kind of coordinate that for the College of Ag. And even when I wasn't actively looking for a job or looking for an internship, just kind of learning about what was out there was really key. And I think, I mean, probably depends on the university and the college, but if I were going back to school today, I would probably go to the career fair for the business school and just kind of, again, learn what opportunities were out there, rather than, not, I wouldn't say limiting, because like I said, I think my focus on ag has served me incredibly well in my career, but just broadening my understanding of what all is out there. So kind of explore beyond, maybe what might seem the most obvious for you.
I think that's a perfect plug for those career cruising results that you're getting back. That, maybe it's a career or a field that you've never heard of that you might know a little bit about, but you're not sure if it's what you want to do. Molly is saying is being open to the different possibilities, the different opportunities. And we're also saying to look into it all, right? Do the research to find out if it's something you want to do or if it's not something that you want to do. Both things are very, very important. They're equally important. So, a three-part question here, Molly. So, first part, I guess, is did you ever think that working with a company like AT&T, you'd be using agriculture, your agriculture background with marketing?
Yeah, and so just to clarify, I don't work on the AT&T account, but so, but I will say, just as an at an agency, working for an agency that does work like that and then does work for like the National Pork Board, which is the group that is responsible for promoting the consumption of pork throughout the United States and internationally. Like, again, I just didn't even know that these organizations existed. Um, and they're big. There's so much just like investment and money and opportunity within the ag industry and beyond. And now that tech is becoming like such a huge thing. I mean, there's even opportunities in agriculture that 5 years ago I would have said, oh, well, that's a tech job. Like I wouldn't really be qualified for that. But things are just really integrating, and technology is driving a lot of that integration. So I think that there's just, I would just say to stay curious, because there's so much happening that impacts, one thing impacts the other, and you can really just learn a lot about a lot of different things if you dig a bit.
So I'm actually gonna insert a question here because I think you're taking us on this path here. So what do you think, or what do you foresee as the future of marketing? I know you just mentioned like the technology piece being added into it and that being a big part of the field. Anything else that you see might be coming as you've been in the industry for about 10 years?
So one thing that continues to kind of interest me, and I think will be an ongoing conversation in the field, is privacy and the role that data privacy plays in marketing. So I'm sure that we've all kind of been fallen victim to good marketing, where maybe you're talking about something with a friend and then the next thing you know, you're being served an ad for something that's related or for that actual brand. That's all intelligence that smartphones and technology have enabled marketers to gather data on you as a consumer to help, again, kind of customize and target their messages. Um, Kind of creeps me out a bit. So I'm definitely a bit more conservative on the privacy side of things. But I think that we're kind of getting to a point now where we're having to ask questions about what's intrusive versus not when it comes to marketing. I know there's, lots of conversations about, okay, well, you can sign up for an email from a brand and get like 1,000 emails sent to your email that you probably just delete or maybe don't look at, or maybe you do. Um, but text messaging feels a bit more personal. So we're always asking questions about like, where do you kind of draw that line? And there's going to be, and already is in like Europe and other places, increased regulation and scrutiny around the use of people's data for marketing purposes. So I just think how that unfolds is yet to be told, but will definitely impact kind of how we market products and services down the road.
So another question, what's the most challenging part of your career?
One thing that I kind of always ask myself is whether I want to be a jack of all trades or like really narrow my focus. And I'm kind of at a point in my career path where I need to make that decision, because it will impact kind of my next roles and how I continue to grow within the agency I'm at now. But again, it goes back to kind of some of the misconceptions, and what I've really tried to hit home is that there's so much you can do. But then you get to a point where, do I want to be a social media expert? Because there's a whole career path for that track. Or do I want to be just more of a marketing generalist, which again, just I'm still kind of navigating what I want to be when I grow up. But I think I'm kind of at a crossroads now where I need to kind of either hone in on specific skills within the world of marketing and communications, or just put a flag in the ground that, you know what, I'm just going to continue to play this more generalist role, which I would say to date I have been able to play, with the added bonus of having that subject matter expertise of knowing ag.
So you've talked a lot about like the writing piece of it all and figuring out what is going to increase demand. So one of the students wants to know, is creativity ever an issue?
Yeah, I mean, when you're writing content about pork, creativity can definitely become an issue. So one thing that really kind of helps me is to look outside of the work in the industry that I'm part of. So like, if I'm a consumer too. I buy things and purchase things and make decisions about why and what I will buy. Um, so kind of looking at, I was on a brainstorming call with some coworkers last week, And we were talking about some like swimsuit advertisements that we had been served, and like how they were very inclusive in terms of the models that they had cast and the different body types, and just thinking about like how they uniquely marketed something that so many brands sell, being swimsuits, and made me, want to learn more about their brand. So I try to like spur creative thought about things that are maybe less enticing. Just kind of looking outside of the industry and things that really resonate with me as a consumer, and thinking about, okay, what of those tactical executions could maybe be replicated in the work that I'm doing.
Great point. Always remembering that you are a consumer too. So looking at it from that perspective as well.
For sure.
So I just have one last question and then we'll let you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thinking back to your experiences as a high school and a college student, the trials, the tribulations, the good things, the not so great things, what is one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were in high school or in college that would have helped you get to this point? You got here
Um,
either way, of course.
yeah,
Piece of advice that would have helped you get here either way.
I think just that it's all going to be okay. Like, there's been some rough patches, and there's been times where I've, had lots of anxiety over the unknown. But I think it's also really cool when you step back and reflect on what you've been through to get from point A to point B. One thing, and this is, applicable to my life today too, I think that in a lot of cases, you're taught that life is just like this straight line trajectory, and you have to be climbing and you have to be, achieving the next step in order to get to the next step. And what I'm learning, especially as it applies to my career, is that it's a little more of a, ebb and flow. And the chart doesn't maybe look so straight and narrow. And there are setbacks, but then there are also leaps that put you kind of steps ahead. So I think just trusting the process and that things are all going to be okay, especially when you're kind of in the trenches of a hard time, is like good perspective to have when you're thinking about the whole picture.
I couldn't agree more. I think after the year or so that we've had, that is great advice. Many of our students are kind of getting back or transitioning back to face learning, or our college students getting back to campus. So just thinking that, again, as Molly said, everything's going to work out. Everything is going to be okay. Life isn't a forward or positive trajectory always. There's a lot of ups and downs, and how you reflect on them, what you learn from them is as equally important as what you went through. So
And
what
just to kind of touch on that too, and when it comes to personal marketing, you guys have lived through something that nobody who will be hiring you lived through, in terms of being at this pivotal point in your lives during a global pandemic. Um, so before I think we all return to normal and like have forgotten about what life looked like for the last year, I would take some time to reflect on what it taught you in terms of working through adversity. And when you get asked an interview question for your first job about how you handle difficult situations, or what do you do when things don't go as planned, I mean, definitely use that as a talking point, because like I said, nobody in my generation had to experience that as a high schooler or as a, college freshman. So don't forget about this time when, years down the road, it might seem like an afterthought.
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly, for closing us with that. This is our last talk, our last visit of the summer. So I think it's a great way to end. Students really reflect on what you've learned this past year, year and a half, and think about those things before you start this new school year. What did you learn about yourself, about how you learn, what you want to do, and use that to kind of catapult yourself to where you want to go. So I will ask now that we give Molly some reactions, tell her thank you. I will also stop the recording now.